Final seconds of the game, a chance to score, and the chance has gone begging. If your business's commerce platform keeps missing the target on golden opportunities, get the MVP you deserve. Get Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool that you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed football boots from Shopify's in-person POS system or you're vending vintage shirts on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is truly a global force, powering Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across over 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite football podcast, back for another week. And I know we said we were going to be talking about Serie A today and doing a preview about Calcio and the Italian top flight. We realised it was deadline day week, and it would have been unfair and unjust and not using our vital source of knowledge that is Mr. Dean Jones to not use that to talk about transfers. So consider Serie A on ice for a singular week. My name is Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today as we look at some of the transfers and stories building up to deadline day. And I'm joined by the transfer guru himself, Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, look, Serie A will be there all season, won't it? We can talk about that at any time. The transfer deadline won't. So we need to preview it, obviously, coming up on Friday, 11 p.m. UK time.
Do you know how much work I did doing a Serie A preview in the last couple of days?
But, mate, how relieved are you going to be next week?
I mean, yeah, the prep's done for next week, so we can all look at it.
Well, I read your message in the middle of the night here. You were like, prepping a Serie A show, but surely we should be doing a transfer show. And I was like, yeah, he's right. And I just turned over and went back to sleep. I thought I'll let him just carry on prepping it.
Thanks, mate.
But well done, mate. Well done. Look, it is. It's been a bit of a weird transfer window, hasn't it? Because you compare it to last summer, which was bonkers. We had two transfers in the Premier League that were over £100 million with Declan Rice and Moises Caicedo.
Yeah.
You had a record spend of like £2.36 billion across the Premier League clubs. And this year, obviously, you haven't had the influence so much of the Saudis coming for all our big players this year so much.
Yet.
And the biggest deal, as we're recording this, is Dominic Solanke from Bournemouth to Tottenham for 55 rising to £65 million. So it hasn't quite had that pizzazz. And actually, as we sit here right now, the Premier League isn't even the top spending, because the deal that took Julian Alvarez to Atletico Madrid actually would go down as the biggest spend that we've seen in Europe so far. So that's been quite curious. And the fact that I thought we'd get someone getting close to £100 million, right? We haven't.
There's a question here. There's a question here on this before we go into things we love and before we go into some of these transfer deals in a little bit later in the podcast. Do you think in the next few days someone will outspend that amount that Dominic Solanke went for from Bournemouth to Tottenham?
It's feasible, yeah, because I mean, Mark Gahey, that transfer is still there to potentially be done. And if Gahey does join Newcastle, then it's for a higher figure than the Solanke one. So it is quite likely, that ends up happening and that the figure does get beaten. But if that deal doesn't go through, then you're really clutching at straws a bit, because you would be looking at like Eze, something like that. And obviously Eze had a release clause, but that's now passed. So if you're going to sign Eze now, if you're Tottenham or Man City, whatever, you're looking upwards of 70 million. So there are a couple of possibilities, but there aren't many. As Victor Osimhen was the one that you were thinking could happen. As who knows, maybe that could still happen. It's not looking very likely right now. But Osimhen should have felt, Napoli certainly should have felt, they had a good chance of getting close to £100 million for him this summer. There was enough teams that needed a good striker.
Yeah.
If last summer you're seeing defensive midfielders go for over £100 million, you'd like to think one of the best strikers in the world could get a £100 million transfer. But it hasn't come through. Obviously, Jared Branthwaite, that one never came through, even though that looked very probable at one stage to Man United. Be surprised if that one could be resurrected at this stage. So it's possible that the Solanke one gets outdone. But yeah, not necessarily likely as we sit here right now.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave transfers there for a second and we'll come back to them in part two. But I wanted to start and more traditional episode today with the things we love. So what are you starting us off with?
Yeah, so the thing I love is a bit odd because I love Kylian Mbappé. But the thing I do love is that Endrick has got his first Real Madrid goal before Kylian Mbappe's got on the score sheet for Real Madrid in La Liga. Like, I love it. For two reasons, really. One, I am absolutely delighted for this kid. And the scenes of celebration, the relief in him, the joy was just legit. It was just real joy. And there's so much pressure on this kid's shoulders. And I really do feel sorry for him in that sense. And we've seen a lot of players of that kind of potential just not quite manage to get there because of the move comes too soon or the expectation and the hype is too much.
Yeah.
And this kid seems so grounded. He's so good, but also so grounded and so eager to do this the right way that when he got that goal at the weekend,
it's a great
much out of
finish,
nothing.
by the way.
It's a great finish, pretty much out of nothing. And it's just a lovely moment. And then at the same time, for it to come before Mbappé, who again has huge expectations, but he is expected to live up to them. And I don't feel as sorry for him that he hasn't scored in 2 games. And it also just adds that slight doubt to whether it's going to work at Real Madrid, or at least how long it takes to work at Real Madrid. Because Mbappé is slightly overthinking things at time. He is slightly trying things you probably wouldn't have thought he'd need to do at this stage of Real Madrid career. You'd pretty much think that if he loitered around the penalty box long enough over the course of 2 games, he'd get a goal. But we head into his 3rd game of the season, which is Las Palmas on Thursday, and he's still looking for that goal. I mean, maybe he gets a hat-trick in that one. Obviously, that's feasible.
Always feasible, isn't it?
But Real Madrid they've got a bit of a dilemma on their hands here because they obviously have to throw everything into Mbappé and getting him up and running and making sure that it works out. But at the same time, you've got other guys who will be feeling that they deserve the chance in this side, like Endrick, like Brahim Diaz, who also scored in the 3-0 win over Real Valladolid at the weekend, and like Rodrigo, who scored in the first match. So it's a bit of a conundrum that Carlo Ancelotti's got to figure out here. And I kind of love it because it just adds a bit more edge to this La Liga season. It means that there's less certainty that Real Madrid do run away with this, as we obviously spoke about last week was possible.
Yeah, I mean, Kylian Mbappé has, in years gone by, stolen the limelight from superstars on the world stage before, right? We talked about those big games, those big matchups with Messi, where it was like, oh, there's a new kid in town. There's a new kid wearing number 10, obviously when he was for France, but also in those PSG games and playing together for PSG as well. There was that kind of sense that at times he was the young upstart and the established superstar was there, and it was Mbappe who was taking the limelight, who was, you know, the one scoring the goals, who was having the moments. So for him to be upstaged by a young prospect in Endrick is quite fitting in some ways for an opening to his Real Madrid career. Do I think that it's going to be a problem? Not hugely. I still maintain that I think Carlo Ancelotti will work a way around this problem and get Mbappe into the form that he wants him in. But it does make things, as you say, a little bit more interesting, and I think it's fun. I really did think you were going to say your thing we love was Oasis reuniting, to be honest. That's what I thought you were going to go with.
I was, mate. I was. And I do love that way more than Kylian Mbappe. It's a football podcast. Does everyone relate to it? It's honestly, Oasis have been such a big part of my life. As a kid, like young kid, my parents weren't especially into like guitar music, right? And bands and stuff like that. They were more into like soul and like Michael Jackson and this kind of stuff. So Oasis kind of like was my discovery at school. I'd have been in like year 9 or 10 or something like that. Yeah, probably 9 or something. Whatever it was, you know, definitely maybe. And What's the Story, Morning Glory. It was just an incredible moment in 90s British culture that can never ever be explained if you weren't there. It was incredible. Like Oasis and like the Spice Girls and all kind of what they brought to the people basically was unmatched. And obviously Oasis comes into football culture as well, and it's been a massive part of that. You know, obviously they're City fans and all the rest of it.
And so
I'm definitely not. I'm obviously not a fan of those teams, and but it doesn't matter. Like even you could hate Man City. You could be a United fan and love Oasis. And it's kind of unavoidable in that era, if you were in Manchester, that you wouldn't have loved Oasis, I imagine. You know, it's a band that I've seen live. I was saying to my mates, can we work out how many times we actually saw Oasis? Because the problem is my late teens, early 20s is a bit of a blur, mate, if I'm totally honest. I couldn't tell you where I was and when. But I know I've definitely seen them a few times. And now I've got the dilemma of this tour, which is in England in July next year, and I'm in California.
You could chain it off the back of my wedding. There you go.
I could. And do you know what? They actually play Wembley Stadium on Taylor's birthday as well. And she was like, I'm really looking forward to doing my birthday in California with all my friends. Like, bad news, mate. We're going to Oasis at Wembley.
I bought you a special surprise. She's like, I don't even like Oasis. Wild. I mean, look, there is a football link. Obviously, there's the football link that you speak about. But I saw this from Henry Moran at the BBC earlier today, and I thought it was sensational. He said Oasis have announced a return after 15 years away. Wojciech Szczesny has today announced his retirement from football after a 15-year career. But on a completely unrelated note, Szczesny's children are called Liam and Noelia.
No way.
There you go. There's fun.
I love it.
So
I love that.
Maybe the influence stretches even further. Right. Yeah. We should leave Oasis there. Probably.
I wanted to call Dylan Liam.
Did you?
Yeah, I gave it a go.
Wasn't working.
It's a good name.
I think it's a good name too. Strong name. Real Celt. There's a real Celt about it, but to be fair, so is Dylan Jones. So there's a fair bit of Celt about that as well. Look, I want to take us to France briefly. And you spoke about Kylian Mbappé. I want to talk about one of the players who's come in to replace him, not directly, obviously. But João Neves has come in at PSG from Benfica. And regular listeners of this podcast will know how high I am on João Neves. I think the kid is an absolute unicorn. I think he is absolutely unbelievable. I've spoken over the summer about why I think this is such a wonderful transfer. But I did think it would take him a little bit of time to get settled and roll into this PSG side and start to make his mark under Luis Enrique. It has not. In his first 2 games, João Neves has got 4 assists for PSG, which is more than he got for Benfica last season. He's been utilised in a slightly different role, a role that he used a little bit more when he was playing in the undersides for Portugal, at the under 19, under 21 European Championships, etc. He's playing a little bit further forward, and he has broken Neymar's record of 3 assists in his first 2 PSG games. Smashed it out of the water. Now, he was always a brilliant technician, but his best best work I thought for Benfica was in those moments where he worked around, he kind of bombed around winning the ball. He was brilliant in terms of turning out of pressure and out, getting Benfica into those transitional moments in terms of carrying the ball, in fact, of drawing fouls and relieving pressure as well. But he wasn't a key pass, someone who racks up key passes. He wasn't someone that, was in his game, that it wasn't what he was being asked to do. Luis Enrique has asked him to do this from the get-go, and it has been an absolute joy to behold. And the relationship that seems to be building, he's playing on the left-hand side of a midfield three rather than the right, where he mostly played for Benfica. The relationship he's building with Bradley Barcola on that side, who's had a brilliant start to the season as well. Barcola very much, and we spoke about this on Monday's Postbox, having that kind of sense of being like, I'm him, I'm stepping up from Mbappé, I've arrived now, this is my season. And their burgeoning relationship makes me very, very excited to watch PSG this season. I mean, it's a team stacked full of wonderful youngsters. We've talked about Vitinha at length. We've talked about Zaire Emery, Barcola as well, just a wonderful footballer. But seeing those two link up down that left-hand side, seeing the kind of bouncing off each other that we're already seeing from João Neves moving further forward, being more involved in that kind of final third and those key passes he's putting together, it's been joyful. So if you haven't watched PSG yet this season, would highly recommend. It feels like must-watch viewing already, and so much of that is due to João Neves, which I'm delighted about.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we sure that everyone can actually watch the French football this season? Did they manage to secure TV rights in every area of the world? Because they were struggling, weren't they?
Well, there's a lot of up in arms at the moment in France because it's actually cheaper to watch it pretty much everywhere that isn't France than the deal that's been done in France. It's actually very reasonable if you get it in the UK on DAZN or whatever. But in France, it's still very expensive. So I think there's a lot of very angry people wandering around in France.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, that I've discovered that's the case for you lot as well, mate. Having to pay for the Premier League there compared to what you can get the Premier League for over here in the US. So, sorry, France, it's not just you who's feeling that. But yeah, João Neves, he's unbelievable, and obviously he was one of the big transfer stories that was coming into this transfer window, and there was a reasonably good chance, I thought, that we might see him in the Premier League. But PSG, they do well to convince players of their projects and of the pathway to go through there, because you could have looked at it and been like, I might just skip this bit and go to the next bit because I'm coming here to win the Champions League and they ain't going to win it. So I'll gloss over it. But you never know, the way that they're putting things together, maybe they do it.
Maybe finally the superstars are gone and it's sort of this French-Portuguese work that's been put together there.
Yeah.
Maybe, and coached by a Spaniard. Perhaps it's all finally coming together for PSG.
Yeah.
But whether they win that or not, very, very exciting. Right. Shall we get on to some transfers? We'll be doing the big six in the Premier League and discussing exactly what's left in this transfer window after the break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Ranks FC, where it's time to talk transfers. Dean, the window slams shut later in this week, and it feels like there's some big storylines left to resolve in the Premier League. So we're going to take a little bit of a look through them right now.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some holes in squads that haven't been fixed, and there are some clubs who have got holes to fix and they're in the transfer market shopping, but for some reason they're shopping in the wrong areas. So we'll get onto that across the course of this chat. But yeah, transfer deadline week is always a weird one because I spend 3 months, 4 months hearing of clubs' plans, speaking to agents, speaking to other journalists, discovering like what everyone's looking for in terms of recruitment, who's on their list, what they don't want. And then suddenly you get something like, yeah, well, Chelsea and Man United are going to swap Jadon Sancho for Raheem Sterling. And you're like, what? What are you doing? Like, that's not in anyone's plans. No one wanted that to happen. And so these little things start to open up and you dismiss them at first, but you obviously have to dig into them a little bit depending on who's done the story as well. And you've got to take it with, some seriousness and discover what the prospects are for these sorts of deals, because deadline week is different. Like the rest of the transfer window is what it is, but this is the stage when you might suddenly realize that there's a big need you've got to sort out, or an opportunity opens up. You might have a panic up that could easily happen. And I think it probably is happening at one or two of these clubs that we'll talk about over the course of this episode, mate. So Yeah, there is work going on at all the big clubs, and I don't think it's beyond expectation that probably all the teams that finished in the top 8 last season could actually end up making a signing between now and deadline.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start to work through them. We'll start by club and then we'll work our way through to a couple of named players at the end of things, just to wrap this up. But we are going to keep this Premier League today because obviously that's where the bulk of your work in this transfer market has come, whether here or Forgive Me Sport. Let's start with Arsenal. Because I suppose with Eddie Nketiah's deal looking like it's done to Crystal Palace as we record this, I suppose the big question on everyone's lips is there a forward coming in? Because whether that is a wide forward, someone to back up Bukayo Saka, who's been something called for by, a lot of our patrons on our Monday postbox, but I think a lot of Arsenal fans across the board, or that's a number 9, which has also been something that's being mooted across, this entire transfer window, really.
Yeah, it was mooted more than number 9 before the transfer window. And then the briefings coming out of Arsenal, really ever since they clearly weren't going for Ivan Toney, were that they weren't looking for a traditional 9 and that they would look outside of that. And there have been a lot of names thrown up over the course of the past few months about where they might go if they were to shop. Now, if you were to look in at like the traditional goal getters, then they were one of the teams linked to Victor Osimhen. Alex Isak was also a player linked with Arsenal. That was never really going to happen. Victor Gyökeres, he was linked with Arsenal for a little while and probably is one that would have been a good get. And I'm surprised actually that Gyökeres hasn't made more column inches over the course of this transfer window in terms of something actually coming together. But maybe that's one for next year. And it started to phase into, okay, well, they're obviously a bit concerned, if anything, about a Saka backup. And we've seen them go for various players. Pedro Neto was one that they detailed. He ended up joining Chelsea. Nico Williams, they still love up to right now. And I think they would sign Nico Williams tomorrow if they could. There's problems more around his wages than anything when it comes to an actual transfer in comparison to the fee that would be needed. But there's also that desire of the player. I don't think that he doesn't want to join Arsenal. I just think he would prefer to join Barcelona. I think so. That's kind of where I sit. And if that's not going to happen in the meantime, I'll just stay where I am and wait to see what happens. So I'm kind of, just been waiting to see if that could crop up again for Arsenal, but it hasn't so far. Kingsley Coman's been available. They've been offered Kingsley Coman and they didn't take it up. Leroy Sané, Arsenal had a look at across this window. That one passed them by as well. Who else were they linked to? Rafinha, Rodrigo, 2 other players that, they had reason to believe that could be potential signings given their status within the Barcelona and Real Madrid squads. So that was interesting. Edingra at Brighton was even linked at one point, and I didn't mind that one. I thought actually that was quite a good one, but that hasn't come to anything. And I think Ademola Lookman was probably the most recent one. And again, I thought, actually, do you know what? As a versatile front option,
absolutely,
it's quite a good one. But that one has been dismissed. So, as you say, Nketiah leaving, they still got Reece Nelson at the moment. And I spoke to someone the other day, they're like, well, while Reece Nelson's here, he can be the Saka backup. Like, it's not like an urgent case because Saka's probably going to be playing. And to sign someone and say, right, you're the Saka backup, they'd be like, I'm not going to play then, am I? When am I going to play? Because last season, he had like a caution flag by him in FPL for like 12 weeks at the end of the season and played every single one of them. So this lad clearly takes a lot to get injured.
Yeah.
But so I've still got an inkling, Jack, that something happens, but I honestly don't know where it's coming from. And I wonder if it's just that market opportunity. It's been a bit of a buzzword in this transfer window, actually, market opportunity. It seems to be the new one that agents are throwing around. But maybe that's what it comes down to for Arsenal, just finding someone that suits that backup role, but that can have a Trossard-like impact.
Yeah, I find it interesting that Fabio Vieira has gone back to Porto on loan. I know there's no buy option in that deal as we understand it, but there is a sense that in pre-season he played a little bit off the right, and there really isn't obviously a role for Vieira in the midfield, considering the options that Arsenal have in there. But as a right winger, I thought he might be quite interesting. Now he's going to go and get minutes at Porto, and he's going to be part of that side, somewhere where he obviously feels at home as well. So lots to like about that move from both sides, I think. But it is interesting that he was used there, and then they've let him go. Maybe that suggests something, but I don't know quite exactly how they're going to play this. I suppose the flip of this is, do we expect any more outgoings? Because they feel really overstocked at left back. Obviously, we saw Ricardo Calafiori come in. Jurriën Timber has returned to the fold. Alexander Zinchenko is still in there. Kieran Tierney's still on the books. And in a pinch, Gabriel can play even in at left back. I don't think they're going to have a pinch, right? So, and Tomiyasu as well. So there's a lot of bodies there for really one spot in this back line. Are we expecting outgoings there? And also, I suppose, what's the latest with Aaron Ramsdale? Because it looked like a move to Wolves might be on the cards, but it appears that that's fallen through.
Yeah. I got a message earlier today saying that one wasn't going to be happening. I do still think there's a pretty good chance of Southampton signing Ramsdale. I mean, the problem with that one at the moment is that Arsenal want money either now or in a year's time. You're still looking around that £30 million mark. And I think they're having some trouble.
Pretty reasonable considering some of the fees.
I don't think it's bad. Yeah, I just think that they're not in a strong position right now to demand it, given that everybody knows that Aaron Ramsdale is not going to be playing for Arsenal this season and needs a transfer because he can't just sit there. And that means that Arsenal aren't in a great space to negotiate, because the player's obviously going to get annoyed if he's just sat there. I mean, Aaron Ramsdale's a great character, and he's not throwing his toys out the pram at all over the course of the last year when David Raya's been there. But blimey, his patience is going to wear thin soon, surely, if he's forced to stay at Arsenal. So they've got to be more open-minded. And they did tell Ramsdale, to be fair, that they would be open-minded about things that crop up if a deal was dragging towards deadline. And that's where we sit right now. So, yeah, I know that Ramsdale quite likes the idea of Wolves, and he quite liked Gary O'Neill, but yeah, Southampton will be keeping him busy, won't they, if that's where he ends up?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What about left backs? Anyone looking like they might go out?
No, I don't think so at this stage, mate. No, I don't think that they don't want to really lose anyone else at this stage.
I assume that Kieran Tierney could leave if they could find a buyer. But
Tierney, yeah. I mean, Tierney. Sorry, I was thinking of people that actually play. But Tierney, yeah, obviously isn't in the plan. So that's a different story. But in terms of the actual squad players at Arsenal now, that they all pretty much know what the situation is and what their roles are going to be.
Okay, all right. We'll bring him back to Celtic. That would be the easy option now. Yeah. But whether the funds are there, well, Celtic just sold Matt O'Reilly, so who knows? Maybe the funds will be there. Let's come on to Manchester City, obviously reigning champions. It's a really weird window, this, for City. Obviously, Savio came in really early. But since then, it's really been about outgoings, right? João Cancelo looks like he's on the brink of a move to Al Hilal. Matheus Nunes has been linked today with a potential move to Atletico Madrid. Surely they don't need any more centre midfielders, but hey, Simeone get a Simeone. Are City looking to strengthen? Is it another one of waiting for the right opportunity? And I suppose the overarching question about City is, and I don't necessarily want to bring up the charges because I think that will resolve itself over the course of this season. But is there a restraint in this window linked to that?
No, not at all. It's not at all. In fact, if you were to speak to people who are close to City and cover them, and there's one guy I speak to about City who is very well connected. And he's kind of of the feeling that they could go and spend loads of money in this window if they actually wanted to. Like, they are being quite careful, but that's because of what it takes to actually become a Manchester City player and actually improve this team and make a mark on this team. But he said to me the other day, it's like, if we wanted to go and sign £100 million player, if we were to go and sign Victor Osimhen next week, they could do it. Like that's their current financial situation, and the charges aren't going to affect that. Now, obviously, by the end of this calendar year, I expect some sort of outcome of these charges, and I think that we'll, by the time we get to the next transfer window, know where we stand on that. So that's probably a story for another day. But in the here and now, City need another forward because they need to back up Haaland, because they've lost Julian Alvarez, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, and they haven't actually replaced him. And so...
And Oscar Bob got injured, right?
Bob's injured, but they still haven't got that like for like, or at least even close to that. They've got... Alvarez did such a good job last season of stepping in for Haaland or De Bruyne. And at the moment, you can't really see that City have that option. And they've been linked with a couple of people in the last week. Kyogo Furuhashi at Celtic is one of them. And that's certainly somebody that City do like. They are also linked a little bit left field with Copenhagen's Ori Oskarsson, who I think he's only 18 or 19. I checked that one out, and it's like, they like him, but it's not really one for here and now. Like that's like for the future. City, I guess, or I'm told, don't have that big prospect that's breaking out as a striker within their setup at the moment. There's nobody that's going to make like a Cole Palmer like impact on the first team anytime soon. That's a goal scorer. So I think
Liam Delap.
Yeah, maybe they should have. So when you're getting to these last days of the window, I know that City are being offered quite a few players at the moment by agents who know that they have this need for somebody. And I just wonder if they end up doing like some sort of short-term deal for somebody just to make sure that they're okay across the course of this season. They've signed well for the future. And they've got a plan of sorts for how this team's going to shape up in the next 3-4 years. But for the next year or so, they don't really have anyone because they didn't expect Alvarez to be gone right now. So that's what I think should and will be looked at quite closely in the coming hours. The midfield is okay. I mean, Gundogan coming in was great for them. Like, they were delighted that market opened up and they could just go and re-sign a player of that quality who knows the club inside out. He takes them up a step. And Matheus Nunes is like, they're not desperate to get rid of him, from what I understand. And I personally don't really see the point of loaning him to Atletico Madrid. I think you might as well keep him around because there's a good chance he's going to get enough games across the course of all your competitions. And he certainly hasn't been pushing from a transfer, from what I understand. There was a Saudi Arabian club looking to sign him and he wasn't that interested in it. So I think he was ready to fight for his place, but that's difficult at face value. But you just know that opportunity is going to crop up. So it's a strange one because, as I say, I think they should probably keep him. But as it stands right now, it does seem like they're kind of open-minded to a loan to Atleti, and we'll have to see whether that includes an obligation. I don't think they would be against selling him if they were to recoup what they spent on him, because I don't think he has a proper future at Man City. I think that it's just going to be one of those that didn't work out, and it's not really a blemish on him as such. It's just like, okay, we tried it, wasn't a good fit, move on and get on with your career. And City are happy to do that normally with players. But obviously, they don't want to be left short, so they need to be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like there's something brewing in the wings at City, but I just don't know what it is. So it's exciting seeing them have that kind of ability.
I do think they'll make a signing. I really do think someone will come in before deadline.
Okay, all right. Well, let's cross Manchester, where things are a little bit more complicated, I would say. And at Manchester United, it feels like a couple of the outgoings hang over all of it. Jadon Sancho, who obviously kind of remade up, if you will, with Erik ten Hag, and all the signs and all the noises were about positivity and moving forward, and yet we've seen very, very little of Jadon Sancho over the first couple of games of this season. Christian Eriksen's also in there as well, very little of him, and Mason Mount's obviously been back in the squad and playing again, which is interesting in terms of where Eriksen fits and what his future looks like. It feels like Manuel Ugarte is going to get done one way or the other. And I like Ugarte, but I have got this horrible feeling of deja vu about this, because when United spend all summer chasing one player and then they get it done late, there are often complications getting them settled into the team. And look, I'm just literally staring at a picture of Sofiane Amrabat, right? The entire summer, it felt like United were like, we want this guy. This is the guy we want. This is the guy that's going to sort this gap in midfield. And then they wait till the very, very last minutes of the window. He doesn't settle properly. And it takes until the last sort of 7-8 games of the season before we see anything of the Amrabat that we saw, both at Fiorentina and then obviously for Morocco at the World Cup. So that worries me a little bit, although I do like Ugarte as a profile. But there is something that tells me that they might go back in for Amrabat. He hasn't featured all that much for Paladinos Fiorentina in the first couple of games. And I suppose what this leads us to is this kind of question that, is midfield the only real place that we can still see United strengthening? And is Ugarte, if he is the one that comes in, is that the end of it? Is that the one player they want, or is it more than one?
Yeah, I mean, Ugarte is the one that they want, and that's the most important thing. I agree with what you're saying about the transfer sagas aren't normally worth it. There was Amrabat, there was Sancho. A couple of years before that, there's Harry Maguire. That isn't a disaster compared to the other two, but was it worth all the fuss they went over to get Harry Maguire in the first place?
And ruining the market for centre-backs for the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's true. So these things obviously don't have great history for turning out well. But if United don't sign Ugarte, then they're in a much worse position. They've got Amrabat. They've kind of had Amrabat at arm's length all summer, knowing that a quick loan deal was very possible and reasonably, I'm told, easy to do if Ugarte didn't work out. But they really, really want Ugarte. They think he's a great fit for what they're going to do. They think he's a good fit for Kobbie Mainoo in terms of a midfield partner. And they also, I'll speak to someone who was like, they even think this improves what you get out of Casemiro, because it means Casemiro hasn't got to be out there week in, week out, which is one of the big problems that they've had at his stage of his career. It also means that Casemiro can come into key stages of games and have influence, which is what he is good at in terms of reading a game and managing a game to some extent. And I'm not saying that that's always a key strength of his. But they were like, he could even play alongside him, and he's got the legs that Casemiro hasn't got anymore. So there are reasons that United believe that, look, Casemiro wasn't supposed to still be here. I'm not going to pretend that he was. He wasn't supposed to be here. They thought he would leave, along with Rafael Varane. But he's still here, and they need to make sure they make the most of having someone of Casemiro's experience in their squad, because they haven't got a load of experience and players that have played at a high level and achieved things. But Ugarte, who knows, mate? I mean, who knows how that will work out? What I would say is that the Jadon Sancho, Raheem Sterling swap deal is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm doing this job for a long time, and this is like a wind-up. Like, United cannot bite on this. Like, they've already had United's trousers down when they gave him Mason Mount. They can't now convince him to take Raheem Sterling as well. Like, this is a joke. He doesn't fit with anything United have been looking for all summer in terms of age, profile, the knock-on problem it will cause with players like Marcus Rashford, the fact he's already played for Liverpool and Man City in his career, and Chelsea, like three of United's most hated teams. He would be undoing, I don't know how much Man City fans would consider him to be a hero of sorts, but that'll be undone because they won't want to know him anymore. And he's also not good enough anymore to take you to the next level. I don't think he solves anything. Raheem Sterling has been consistently inconsistent for 2 years, ever since he went to Chelsea. Just hasn't lived up to it. Don't know why that is.
Almost everyone at Chelsea, to be fair to him.
Yeah, but so why is he any better than Jadon Sancho? Like, you might as well keep Jadon Sancho. There's no point. I say that Jadon Sancho definitely should not stay at Man United. He needs to get out the club. I was never convinced that it was really all the water had passed beneath the bridge between him and Ten Hag. I think that those things are extremely difficult to overcome. And there'll always be a sense of resentment at the back of your mind somewhere, especially when you then start in pre-season and you're the false nine and not really a position, but you're going ahead with it. And then it gets to the season real and you're no longer the false nine as soon as they have another option to put there. And then you're not even in the squad. I mean, I think that Ten Hag doesn't trust Sancho, and I don't think Sancho trusts Ten Hag, so I don't see why they would even consider continuing with this. So the best thing that can happen in my eyes for Jadon Sancho is to get out of the Premier League. Don't go to Chelsea. Like, absolutely don't go to Chelsea. Like, why that would be a solution for him either, I don't know, because they've already got 8 other players who can play his position.
London
Juventus, I actually don't think.
guess.
I think Juve would be a great place for him personally, mate. I think that the league would suit him, and I think we saw what Dortmund did for him, and I don't see why being in Turin couldn't have a similar impact under Thiago Motta.
Do you think that's the most likely outcome then for Jadon Sancho at this point of the window? Does that feel like?
I think it's the best option, but I don't know because Chelsea are pushing this, and Chelsea have a knack of getting what they want in the transfer market. They somehow make things happen. They make people believe that they need these players that they don't need. They manage to get sums of money that they should no longer get for these players. It's remarkable. And so, yeah, I keep thinking to myself, and I speak to someone who covers Juventus. I speak to him almost every day about this. And he's excited about Jadon Sancho, but he's like, Juventus can't afford him. Like they cannot pay him this money. So United have got to pay towards that. And I'm like, I think they will, mate. I think they will because they just want it. They're going to want him off the books. They don't want to have this dilemma all season again. So also, my hunch is he ends up at Juventus, but I can't rule out Chelsea because they're just absolute madness.
Is there an element of that with United? And I know that obviously it's about the financials and it's about the kind of making it work, but the optics would be absolutely dreadful. And look, I agree with you. I don't think that Chelsea is probably the best place for Jadon Sancho. And I think it would be great in a Motta team. They look like they're a little bit light on the wings, especially with that injury to Tim Weah. Cambiasso played brilliantly there on Monday night, but he is a right back by trade, and whilst he can push forward, it does feel like Juve are kind of on a big clear out, and there's this opportunity arising for different people to get a moment in this. I would think that would be a wonderful deal, and I'd be very, very excited about it. But is there an element in terms of optics for United that if he goes to Chelsea and succeeds, and he was just brilliant, and suddenly he was back to the player that made United spend all that money on him, and again, I don't think any of this is likely, but does that look absolutely dreadful for United in a way that it probably doesn't if he goes to Juve and succeeds?
Yeah, there's just no need to be considering this because there's no money there. Like if Chelsea were like, we'll give you £45 million for Jadon Sancho, I'd be like, go for it. Like if he's successful for you, then fair play. You can do something that we haven't managed to do in the last couple of years. But to say we like Jadon Sancho, we'll take him. You can have Raheem Sterling. Like, that they're actively told this player is not good enough for them. He doesn't fit in with their plans.
Yeah.
Like, why would you take him? This doesn't fit in with anything that Dan Ashworth is supposed to be about at Man United. They're supposed to be more careful in their thinking, more logical. You look at the signings that they've made of Euro and De Ligt and Xerxes and Agate, and at least you can see the sense in these signings, right? And you can see the profiling
whether they work
of
or
these.
not is a different question, yeah.
Yeah. So to now panic in the last week and end up with Raheem Sterling suddenly at the training ground would be like, oh my God, how have we ended up back here? Like, don't do it. Just don't do it.
It takes us nicely onto Chelsea, right? Because they have been the story, as usual, of this entire transfer window. And after a big win at the weekend, things look a little bit brighter than they perhaps did a week ago for Chelsea. But this last bit of the window feels like a lot of exits need to be sanctioned. Now, Lukaku finally looks like he could be heading through that permanent exit door off to Napoli and the end of what has been a saga over a couple of years, to be honest. But something that interests me, in terms of this squad is that surely there's going to be 7 or 8 out the door here, right? Georgie Petrovic, Raheem Sterling, Ben Chilwell, Trevor Chalobah, Carney Chukwuemeka, David Datro Fofana, Armando Broja, who obviously failed that medical at Ipswich. I don't know what happens next for him. But Maresca said he'd been training with 21 or 22 players, right? That was, to be fair to him, ahead of the deals for João Felix and ahead of the deal for Pedro Neto. But does this leave room for them to potentially bring in one more as well? Because that number, even with Felix and Neto, leaves them 1 or 2 short of what the Premier League kind of squad cutoff is. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, they are going to obviously sign a striker. So, whether that's Osimhen, whether that's Ivan Toney, whether that's John Duran, I do think that Chelsea bring in a forward, and that's always been my thinking. I also wonder what it means for Mark Guéhi in terms of where he fits in here, whether he ends up leaving Chelsea on loan. I can't see he's going to get any game time. So, and I also wonder about the rank squad's favourite striker, Nicholas Jackson. What's he thinking right now? If they did go and sign Ivan Toney or Victor Osimhen, and they've just signed all these other players that play on the flanks, where's Nicholas Jackson playing this season? I'm confused by that.
Well, they do have to compete on European fronts as well as everything else. So you kind of do want 2 quality players in each position. And I absolutely can understand that. And I think that whilst a lot of Chelsea's books and management has been absolutely wild this summer, then bringing in another striker has been something that I've kind of looked at and been like, yeah, that actually does make sense in a way that a lot of their other moves I've been a bit confused by. Like if they go and make a move for a proper number 9, and look, I was listening to John Obi Mikel's podcast the other day, which is great, by the way, the Obi-Wan podcast. Yeah. And he said something, I think it was on beIN Sports, and he was basically like, Nicholas Jackson, that's where he is with his finishing, right? He's not, a great finisher right now. And Nicholas Jackson clapped back at him after scoring and assisting and playing really well, actually, in the game against Wolves. And John Obi Mikel addressed it. He said, look, I really like him as a player. I think there's lots of things about him that are going to be excellent, but I think he needs a senior striker to come in and just, help him with that finishing, guide him through it, and just be the kind of man for him to look up to in order for him to reach his potential. I actually thought that John Obi Mikel handled it beautifully. I thought he spoke really, really well about it. He obviously cares for the club, but also clearly sees Jackson as someone who has that potential to kick on and be excellent. But, he's saying that he probably wants a guiding figure. And I think that's great. And I think it's nice to be able to say that and handle it in the way that he did. I think there's probably a sense in that you go, well, if you're this good, and look, Nicholas Jackson clearly has that kind of sense of, rating himself, which is absolutely necessary. And I've spoken about before, especially at Chelsea, to be that guy, you need to have that unshakable confidence in yourself. So for him, that gives him someone to push against, right? To be like, no, I want to be the starting striker. Hang on. I went and scored 13, goals last season in a difficult season for Chelsea. I actually performed. I've started the season pretty well again. That gives him something to challenge himself and push himself onwards. You'd hope that for a player, and then look, maybe his response to John Obi Mikel probably says something about that, and maybe some insecurity around it, fine. But you'd hope for a player that would be like, go on then, prove it.
Yeah, look, the thing is he misses too many chances. So he can say this and back himself, but he misses too many chances. And Chelsea are at the stage when they can't have that. We've seen that Maresca is a ruthless manager. Now, I don't think he can have any arguments if they were to bring in a player of the calibre of Victor Osimhen. But if they bring in an Ivan Toney or John Duran, I see a massive problem coming, because all those players are going to be looking at each other thinking, you're rubbish, I'm better than you. And it's going to lead to more conflict, and it's going to lead to more resentment, and it's going to lead to more headlines, and ultimately it will lead to another exit. So I don't think that you can risk rocking the boat with Nicholas Jackson by bringing in somebody who's not necessarily that much better. Like, is Ivan Toney definitely better than Nicholas Jackson?
Yeah, I'm not sure. No, I mean, he's a very different type of player. Is probably the argument I'd make, and that allows him.
Would I back him to score more than 13 goals for Chelsea in a season? I don't think I would. I think I probably
would, but you have to then take into account penalties, etc. And actually,
he's not going to have pens, is he? So
it's all worth considering.
Yeah, so I think that's a potential problem for them. The one area that they really need to sort out is a centre back. I was told that everybody who was at the club is not 100% convinced that they have the defensive capabilities to protects their goal at all, counts on all fronts across this season. And I think, Toast Adarabioyo, like, he was fine as a backup defender, but the level of recruitment at the back hasn't been where it needed to be, is kind of what my reading of the situation is. But as we stand right now, they're not actually signing anyone at the back. So that's what I think their big need is. Hey, yeah, they've got a lot, but then none of them are any good together. I think they've got probably one good partnership between all of the ones that they've actually got. So that's a problem in my book going into the final days. They've obviously spent a load of money. Again, on Patreon, look, I know that I upset Chelsea fans by being extra harsh on them. And the thing is, it's just staring me in the face that this team will score a lot of goals. They will. And they could be great on that front, but I just don't trust them going back the other way. And I just don't see how that's going to be fixed for them to make the top four like they could be. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, let's be honest, nobody has any idea what that Wolves result really was. Is that them setting a standard and showing us what can be produced over and over again? Or was that setting a standard that can't be reproduced? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we need more evidence on that. And I think even Chelsea fans who will look at the end of last year and be like, look, we put in a really good run of results to get us back into Europe, and absolutely fair enough. But obviously there's been a massive reset this summer, and I think we need more evidence to suggest that, I think both performances have been, I thought that the City performance, in contrast to you, I thought was fine. And I thought that the Wolves performance was very, very impressive, but I'm not yet ready to trust them. And that's okay as well. And I think that it's okay to be like, all right, let's just see what they look like next week. The start looks pretty good from where I'm sitting. Does it need more? Maybe. And I suppose, the outgoings actually interest me slightly more than, the incomings at this point. I think they will sign a striker. I think you're right. But in terms of, do we expect 8 exits? I've reeled them off there. Do we expect Georgie Petrovic to be at the club? No, I can't see it. Raheem Sterling and Ben Chilwell feel like they will find suitors. Trevor Chalobah's been linked elsewhere all summer. Maybe Palace, now that, Joachim Andersen's gone to Fulham. Mark Gay, we'll come on to him in a minute when we talk about Newcastle. Maybe that opens up an option for Trevor Chalobah to go to Palace. Carney Chukwuemeka, Maresca spoke about him potentially going on loan, but why would a club take him on loan without the option to, anyone's going to afford Chukwuemeka? Surely they're looking at making that permanent, and therefore it's an exit. And I don't know what happens with the likes of Dacho Fofana and Armando Broja, as well as, a couple of the other youngsters, Harvey Vale, etc., that you'd imagine will probably head out the exit door in one way or the other.
Yeah, sorry. As you're talking, there's just news starting to break that Chelsea are making their first offer for Victor Osimhen, and that the agents now starting talks with Chelsea. So Damasio is just starting to report around the Osimhen transfer, so that'll be keeping me busy later, no doubt. But yeah, so in terms of the outgoings, it's obviously going to be a mess. I think Chalobah's the biggest mess because I think it's a player that they could have done with keeping in the squad. I think that he would have filled a role that nobody else really can at Chelsea. And I don't see the point of offloading him at this stage of this. Is it evolution or revolution? I'm not sure. But either way, there's a few messy endings here to players' times at Chelsea. And it just doesn't sit very well with the wider football world. Like, I know a lot of Chelsea fans is like everyone hates us and this and that. It's because you're doing stuff that like nobody's ever really seen before. And this is even different. Like, obviously Chelsea have rattled the world before when Abramovich came in, and the way that he went about business. And
the Lone Army, right, was revolutionary in some ways.
Well, yeah,
I know there's a lot of it in
he spent all this money first, bought Premier League titles as people claimed at the time. Then there was like having all these loan players. And now there's this new thing where they're stocking up players in a different way on these 8-year contracts and all the rest of it. So people don't like change. People don't like seeing people try to reinvent the game and the rules of the game in terms of how it's run. And so that's why Chelsea have rattled people. As a journalist, it's been baffling and it's been confusing, and trying to understand the thinking behind of it. It's been impossible at times, if I'm honest. but they're kind of doing things their way. It feels a little bit like they're making it up as they go along. And maybe they are to some extent. I mean, there's quite a few people here that have never actually had these jobs before. And anytime you go into a new job, no matter what you do in life, you're blagging it to a certain extent. Now, obviously, they've had a couple of years to get their feet under the table, and they're doing things very differently now. It's not like the time when Todd Boehly was trying to sign Cristiano Ronaldo. You know, we've moved on from that kind of nonsense, but we've moved on to a different stage now. But then when they land players like Pedro Neto, when they bring in João Felix, if they bring in Victor Osimhen, that's game changing in a completely different way. And even me, their harshest critic, will be like, okay, you've ended the summer with a sensational squad. Let's see where you can go with this.
Yeah, and then now back it up on the pitch. I get it. Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, we'll put a pin in Chelsea because I think we could talk for hours about them. And let's go to Liverpool.
We just did.
Yeah, well, indeed we did. Let's go to Liverpool because they have finally sort of, it's not confirmed as yet, but we've seen Giorgio Mamardashvili at the training ground in Liverpool kits, etc. As we record this. One signing over the line, and a fine signing it is too, but he's back off on loan to Valencia, which is perfectly reasonable succession planning as far as I'm concerned. I think that is sensible and useful business from Liverpool as they look to what might happen with Alisson in the future. I love Mamardashvili. I've been saying that I said that Chelsea should have signed him last summer, in fact. And I think he's really quite excellent, but that's sort of by the by in some ways for actually what's going on at Anfield this season. The Chiesa deal has been talked up in recent days, which does give them some depth on the right if it gets done. I really like that as well for the price it's on. And I know that a lot of people are talking about the injuries. He still played quite a lot of games for Juventus last season. And I think at the prices that are being talked about, that sort of 12 to 15 million pound mark, that's a really, really good bit of business. If Liverpool get that one done, it feels like a really sensible gamble. My feeling still is that they're just going to manage this market carefully, in particular if a central midfielder comes up. But Brentford have paid them nearly £40 million for Fabio Carvalho and Sepp van den Berg. Last summer, we saw them bid £100 million for Moises Caicedo. Obviously, he didn't come. They bid for Romeo Lavia as well. Surely there's money there to spend if Liverpool want to.
They just aren't going to spend players unless they know it definitely upgrades the position. And there's this feeling that, like, what's the point? Like, we've got a great squad and we are not going to buy the wrong player for this position because that is completely the wrong thing to do. We've seen our rivals do that after they've changed managers and go backwards. Okay, so they're learning
like
lessons.
Liverpool are playing the exact opposite game to Chelsea, right? It feels like Chelsea are like, look, if we bring in these players, then if 50% of them successes, then actually it's going to be worth it in the long run. Whereas Liverpool seem to be playing the exact opposite end of the risk and reward spectrum. And they're like, no, it only is if these are guarantees that we actually start to really start to get involved properly.
Yeah, and I think there's a certain section of the fan base that are aggravated.
Yeah.
But they say, dig your hands in your pockets, FSG, and what's Richard Hughes doing, and all this kind of stuff. But I think for your Liverpool fan that's at Anfield, you know that everybody's content with this team that you've got. You're seeing the football that's being developed under Arne Slot, and you can see that there's not an obvious gaping hole. Now, of course, I'm slightly surprised in the last week that they're signing a goalkeeper and Federico Chiesa, because that didn't seem to me to be the priority. It was like a centre-back and a DM. Like, they're the two gaps that I'm looking at for Liverpool and thinking, right, make sure that you get in a defensive midfielder even after missing Zubimendi. And there's this risk around Joe Gomez going, you better do something there just in case. Now, by all accounts, Joe Gomez probably staying now. So that's helpful if that's the case, and that kind of secures that position for now, and they've got a bit of depth along that back line, and that should see them through. But if Joe Gomez did leave late in the window, I 100% expect Liverpool to go and replace him immediately. Like that would be they would have options to go and chase, and you've seen centre-backs linked all summer, and I think that would happen. But yeah, I mean, Chiesa's just come out of left field, really. I mean, clubs across the Premier League have been offered...
mate. Market opportunity.
Yeah. They've been offered Chiesa before, and like, most of the
not for
big
12
teams,
million pounds. They haven't.
15 they were. Yeah, everyone knew that Chiesa 2 months ago was not signing a new contract at Juventus. Juventus were not having him running down his contract. He had to leave by deadline day because there was no way back from it. He had to find a new club. So the feelers went out. They've been going around all the clubs letting them know of his availability. And here we are in the final week and Liverpool coming to the table. Now, I'm intrigued, to be honest, about what the knock-on effect of that is and what's the thinking. To me, it's either that it's putting a successor in place for Mo Salah before they need it, or it's that Luis Diaz is unsettled and isn't going to be at the club much longer. Maybe it's both of those things. I don't know. But Luis Diaz obviously is...
Or it's just some depth.
No, they don't need any more depth, mate. They've already got 5 or 6 players that can play up there. They don't need Chiesa this season. Where's he going to play? I honestly don't understand how this fits in with the fact that I don't think
there's a natural backup on the right wing if Salah picks up an injury or runs out of form like he did last year. And look, Mo Salah looks absolutely phenomenal first 2 games, but equally you look at what happened towards the back end of last season and you're thinking, well, who's going to actually step into that role? And whilst Harvey Elliott can play out there on the right, I think that in Arne Slot's system, he fits that role behind the striker where Dominic Szoboszlai's been playing far better than he perhaps does on the right wing. And I wonder if it's just looking at that and thinking, okay, well, that gives us an option. And just like I said with Nicholas Jackson, you know, it's put down someone that just pushes you onwards a little bit, someone that's going to be in there going, hang on, I want a game as well. Maybe that helps.
Maybe, but I don't think you could have sold this to Chiesa saying, look, Salah's never going to be available for every single game, so you'll get a few games out on the right. You're like, all right, okay. Well, should I just wait for that then?
It's more games than he's going to get for Juventus anyway.
Well, maybe, yeah, there's that. But I just find it really difficult because Mo Salah's going to be starting every single game and he plays the duration, you know, he's still so fit that he's going to be playing 80 minutes of every game. And so you're then looking at Chiesa going in from either the left or playing through the middle. And they've already got 5 other players fighting over those spots. And they're all really good players as well. So I'm slightly confused. I don't think it's a bad transfer because it's a great value to get someone like Chiesa out. And this is a player that's been linked with Liverpool for about 3 years. So it's a good deal. It just surprises me. And I'm not sure exactly what it means in terms of how this team functions, but that's not for me to really worry about, I guess. It's a summer of change, and I think that they're just cautious not to change too much. We're going to see the window close. Attention will almost immediately turn to Trent, Salah, Van Dijk. What are your contract situations? We're getting this sorted out as soon as possible. We're not having this drag on till the end of the season, and know where they all stand with that. And then we've seen how Liverpool have played for the first 2 weeks of the season. Like, this team's going to be competitive. They're going to be certainly top 4, possibly challenging the top 2.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm intrigued now by this kind of risk and reward battle that we're going on between Chelsea and Liverpool and seeing how the two play out and seeing what they look like. So I'll be keeping an eye on that one. All right, we'll quickly rattle through just 3 more because you said at the top you saw potentially a signing for each of the last year's top 8. So Tottenham, Wilson Odobert felt like the last attacking piece I thought they'd bring in without a big sale. So I guess the question's on outgoings. Do you see any names leaving Spurs? I suppose the one that hangs over it for me is Sergio Reguilon, who's obviously been out on loan for the last couple of years, still is a Spurs player and probably shouldn't be by the end of this window.
Yeah, exactly that. So somebody like Reguilon, they've got 3 or 4 players that have been on the fringes and they've been looking for
Manor Solomon's gone to Leeds, etc.
Manor Solomon's gone to Leeds, exactly. So you're looking at players like them and Lo Celso and just trying to find these players new homes because they've lingered around some of them and then they're not going to fit back into the squad. Now, in terms of what they do, Eze was a big link throughout the summer. That hasn't materialised. I think they've probably got enough options up top now. And obviously the big signing of Solanke suggests that that's where the bulk of their money has gone. So I'd be surprised if they went for Eze, but he has been on their list. And then there's been some talk when I speak to people that cover Spurs or agents that know of stuff that's going on around Spurs about adding another midfielder. And obviously they signed Archie Gray and they got Lucas Bergvall coming into the setup, but they're both only 18. So I don't know what you can totally expect from them. And one thing that I've been told a few times that, well, they also want someone with some real power coming out of the midfield. And I guess, that was the link with Conor Gallagher across this summer. Morgan Gibbs-White is somebody that they've really liked, and I know they like him as more like an 8 that breaks out. I don't think that's just him as like a traditional 8 as you would think it, but like it's the easiest way to explain it.
I can see that. I can definitely see that for Ange. We've seen that kind of player work for him, especially at Celtic, I think.
Yeah, so they like that. They like João Gomez at Wolves. They like what he brings. But I don't necessarily think I would expect them to pull off a transfer like that at this stage of the window.
So they need a keeper.
They've had their eyes on.
I wondered about this. So they need a keeper. Have they got an eye on the market for keepers? It feels like obviously Vicario.
Yeah, they want a backup keeper. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they want a backup keeper. Yeah, they do, and they've been linked with a few as well recently. So that is something. Like it's obviously a minor one, but there is that. And then the one that I keep being told about is just if you were to say, right, okay, but where will they sign somebody? It's a defender like that. They want a versatile defender who can particularly cover the left side. So that's somewhere that I think we might actually see a signing come in the final days.
Okay. All right. What about Newcastle? Obviously, there has been this rumoured thing about Mark Gay for the entire summer. It now looks like maybe some headway has been made on this. But also in terms of outgoings, Kieran Trippier. And then I wonder if the return of Sandro Tonali, which is going to happen, as you're listening to this podcast on the Wednesday night, probably, impacts where they're looking for the rest of this window.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. Newcastle, they've had big intent in this window, and I was told, you're probably going back a month now, that they still had £100 million potentially to spend, and that would probably be spread across the centre-back and a forward. Now, a right-sided attacker is what we've been expecting. Almiron was supposed to go. Newcastle was supposed to bring in somebody on that side. Hasn't materialised. And obviously, Mark Gahey, they're now, if they're going to clinch that signing, it's going to be about almost £70 million. So even if they did have £100 million, they're not left with a lot there. And they're also still considering goalkeeper options. They've been looking at a couple across the course of the last week to contend with Pope. So I don't know where exactly this ends up. The centre-back signing is the priority because Eddie Howe, obsessed is probably the wrong word, but he is extremely excited by how much it elevates their potential to have Mark Gahey in their back line. Not just in terms of making the top 4, but in terms of actually being trophy contenders as well, I think. Like that, just having that extra resilience, that calmness on the ball. Like what you see what he brought to England in tournament football. I think there's that sense with Gahey. He's just so trustworthy, so calm. He's a lovely guy. And I think he really fits in with what Eddie Howe wants to make Newcastle and what his actual vision is for that team. And then, so Gahey would be the one obviously to look out for. And depending on when you're listening to this, that might have come to some resolution. I mean, Palace were adamant this was not going to drag into the final 3 days of the window. But I spoke to someone close to Newcastle last night and they said, yeah, I'd probably sign him on deadline day. I was like, surely not. Yeah, and then Newcastle, maybe they go and just sign a forward with some Premier League experience. I'm still told they're interested in Calvert-Lewin. I don't know necessarily it's obviously not the right-sided player they're looking for, but maybe they just want an extra body in the attack to give them some goal threat. But
Raheem Sterling's available.
Just get Raz and Sancho, get them together.
Yeah, maybe the
someone go and sign both of them.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's finish with Aston Villa. It feels like they've done most of their business and they've done it in a sensible way. We spoke right at the start of the window about them being one of the teams that had burst out of the blocks and made things happen. There's been some funny moves in terms of people coming and going. Cameron Archer being bought back and then being sold to Southampton, all a bit strange. But is there lots left here? It feels like Diego Carlos might still need to leave the club at this point.
Yeah, there's a couple of little bits and pieces. Yeah, and I don't think it's anything major because, like you say, they were quick out the blocks and they blew everyone away early on, and they were winning the window for sure. obviously they picked up an injury and Matty Cash suffered a setback. And so attention in the last 24 hours has come back on, I can't pronounce this guy's name, Jack. He's from Feyenoord. Lutschel Gertruder, is that right?
Gertruder, I think it is, but
Gertruder.
I am also
it was a good go, wasn't it? It was a good go.
I'm a little bit weak on Dutch names. I think I'm right there, though.
Yeah, so Gertruder at Feyenoord is the one that they've been linked with him for a while, and it's been a genuine link, as I'm told. He's been captain at Feyenoord so far this season, so you wouldn't imagine it's an easy get. But there has been, in the last few hours before we started recording this, some optimism about that actually being plausible. So that might be one to look out for, I think. There's also, they were linked with Raheem Sterling. There does feel, they were linked with Chiesa actually as well for quite a while. Does feel like there's some potential. And maybe that's also linked to John Duran, because Duran is a backup option for Chelsea as a striker. I even read a couple of reports 2 days ago that West Ham still might have an interest. Obviously, he did that Irons sign and then scored against them a few days later. I don't think... He did
point at the stadium, so maybe he was saying he will stick around there.
I don't know how much Aston Villa fans would care about losing John Duran, because I don't think they'll probably hold much attachment to the guy. But they would definitely want a replacement through the door if he's going to be leaving at all, because it would leave him short. So that would need to happen as well, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, we've run on a little bit longer than I was hoping. So we're going to leave the transfer section there. We have got a part 3, though, which is going to be a return for Guru Wisdom. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Ranks FC. Our third and final part heralds the return of
Guru Wisdom, Guru Wisdom, Guru Wisdom.
What you got for us this week, DJ?
Well, I unveiled, I don't know if you've seen it on Instagram today, Tuesday, but I was able to reveal a big signing. Here we go. Dylan Jones signs for AYSO. The picture's there. He's got the shirt on. It's a 2-month deal, no obligation on a permanent. He's had to reject some offers from Saudi Arabia. They're trying to throw some money his way, but he's not interested in that at this stage. He's only 6, he said. He's not ready for all that. All he wants is a PlayStation 5. But yeah, Dylan's joined the ranks of American youth soccer, Jack. And it's interesting, I've got to say. And obviously, like, from doing this podcast for all the years that we've been doing it, a lot of people have talked about the barriers that exist in terms of kind of the privilege and how difficult it is to get good coaching and all this stuff. And I've never really understood. And it's been actually it's one of the most difficult things actually to get through all the years we've been doing this, because the listenership have had a much better understanding of that than me, you, or Sam has ever had. So here I am, 2 months now into life in California, and I'm starting to get it. So Dylan's introduction to playing football out here has been interesting. There's a pickup type situation down at the local rec on a Sunday. So Dylan had been to that a few times with a local coach who's from Chicago, lovely guy. He's a good coach, but the quality's not the highest. Let's just say that. I mean, they played a game at the end of training last week, and Dylan had scored a hat trick within, I don't know, 3 minutes. It was ridiculous. Like,
the boy's a talent. What can we say?
And no, well, this is the thing. I'm like, hang on, he's not that good. Like, he's obviously like he's pretty good, but he ain't that good. Anyway, the coach is like, oh dear, and so he twits the team around, and it ended up 3v6. He did. That was the way he fixed it. So I think Dylan only scored one more goal, but so he came off saying, "Oh, I scored 4 goals." I'm like, yeah, well done. Anyway, so then he goes, and we've signed him up now. So it's like, right, he needs a team to join. So I was told about AYSO. And he's been doing that. It's the American Youth Soccer Organization. And what they do is that you all sign up to this organization, and then all the kids, however many sign up, you're then put into teams, basically, teams of 6 or 7. And then across the next 2 months, it's like a tournament. You all play against each other. So it is competitive, but you're not playing against teams from anywhere else. Like it's all within the same system.
In-house system.
And that's quite good.
I like it.
That's quite good. I really like that. I thought actually
Feels like
for
a training
6-year-olds, this is great because they're all learning. And, the other kids have clearly just not played as much football as Dylan. Like they just haven't. Like I can see that already.
I mean, you used to play with him almost every day.
He's been playing since he was 6 months old. But it's good for Dylan because he's learning about, the big thing for me at the moment is just getting him like used to talking to other kids, and he's a bit shy. So that's the most important thing for him at the moment. So he's doing that. Now I've been speaking to some of the dads around the place as well. And there's another couple of clubs we're going to try, but
shouts out
to play
to
competitive.
By the way.
Yeah, shouts out. There are a few dads actually that have started to ask about the pod, and there might be some of them listening. So hello, everyone, the new friends. Everyone's very welcoming over here. But yeah, looking into competitive stuff, Jack. Like, say you played for Walton and Hersham, for example. Like, a lot of his mates are signing up for now.
Acton Garden Village, I'll actually have you know.
Yeah, well, there you go. You'd pay about £150 for the season.
Yep. Subs.
You play a game every Sunday, train once a week, you'd get your kit. Well, the version of that out here, from what I can tell, is about $2,500 a season.
Wow, that is a lot.
So now I get it. Now I understand. And it's like, and by the way, I appreciate it. People that have got in touch with me from America trying to explain this and help me through understanding all of this. Johnny, one of our listeners, has been messaging me today about it. And they call it like travel team football, because I guess once you're in competitive football, you actually travel around like properly. It can actually take up a lot of your weekend. And so, not sure how much Taylor realizes how much traveling we're going to do in the future if this starts to take off. But yeah, I'm starting to get it. And thanks to everyone who warned me of this. And I will be coming back, one, looking for wisdom, but also letting you know what I learn along the way in this American youth soccer world that I've entered, Jack, because it's wild. It's wild. I mean, there's lots of stuff I'm learning that the expressions from the side of the pitch, the words that are used in coaching, sometimes the lack of understanding. I basically think I'm probably going to end up being a coach, Jack, is where this is going to head. But I don't want to. I'm trying to put that off. I really don't want to do that. But in the end, I can just see me like, right, I'll do it. Just leave it to me.
The reluctant Englishman having a go on the sidelines. Yet to be seen how this ends up panning out. But I'm excited, and I hope you all are too, listeners, as Dean begins this journey. And with that, I think we'll probably pull this episode to an end. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you very much to transfer guru Dean Jones, who has led and been the expert across the course of this podcast.
Oh, cheers, mate. Enjoyed it.
It's been lots of fun. And as we get up to deadline day, make sure you're following Dean on all the socials and all of his articles as they come out over the course of the next few days. I imagine they're going to be incredibly busy. I've been Jack Collins. This has been Ranks FC. Thank you so much for listening as ever. As we said before, there are some pretty exciting and new things on the way for Ranks. So make sure you keep subscribed and keep across our socials as we announce a couple of new bits and new faces joining the pod over the next few weeks. I'm very, very excited. We've done some pilots. I've had some great experiences over the last few days, and I'm really looking forward to sharing them with you. But for now, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all very, very shortly. Take it easy, gang. Peace. Final seconds of the game. A chance to score, and the chance has gone begging. If your business's commerce platform keeps missing the target on golden opportunities, get the MVP you deserve. Get Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool that you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed football boots from Shopify's in-person POS system, or you're vending vintage shirts on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is truly a global force, powering Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across over 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/ranks.